Indonesian police have just revealed fresh details of terrorism allegations against radical Muslim cleric Abu Bakar Bashir, claiming he was the figurehead for a new al-Qaeda-style network. Bashir faces the death penalty after being formally charged with inciting others to commit terrorist acts. The cleric was a founding member of the Jemaah Islamiyah organisation implicated in both the Bali bombings, though some observers argue his influence has waned in recent years. Now, all the speculation centres on what impact a successful conviction might have. Earlier, I spoke to the senior advisor to the International Crisis Group, Sidney Jones, in Jakarta. Sidney Jones, can you first of all take us through the nature of the charges against Bashir and the background to them?
Yes, Bashir was arrested on the suspicion of having funded the militant training camp that was discovered in Aceh last February. And the money that he raised was used, among other things, to purchase arms. He was also the person who sent Abu Tolut, the man who was arrested last Friday, to the camp to act as a training instructor.
Why has it taken so long?
It hasn't really taken that long. He was charged almost immediately after his arrest, and the police wouldn't have arrested him until they believed they had sufficient evidence that would hold up in court. I think what's happened was that they wanted to make absolutely sure that the case was watertight, so that the dossier was only completed yesterday and handed over to the court. But it's not much longer than most of these cases normally take.
What do you see as being the significance of these charges, especially in terms of the impact on the jihadist movement in Indonesia?
I think the charges expose the secret military wing of the organization that Bashir established in 2008, and also that much of the things he's been saying about only working for Islamic law and not being involved in any kind of criminal activity are sham. I think that his arrest and likely his conviction are not going to substantially affect the movement one way or another. I think what's really affected the movement are the more than 100 arrests that the police have affected since the discovery at the camp in February.
So would you say that Bashir has lost influence over the years since the Bali bombings?
Yes, I think he's lost significant influence, and I think there are many, many more people that realize that this man is not just a kindly, elderly cleric, but something much more dangerous. I think there won't be a major outcry if and when he's convicted.
Is there any doubt in your mind about the role he played in the Bali bombings?
I think there's still something of a question about exactly what his role was in the Bali bombings. It's never been exactly clear how much he knew about the plans for the bombings. I think it's pretty clear, though, that he had some notion of what was going on, but he wasn't directly operationally involved, as far as I know.
Because he has been regarded as a figurehead for the movement, what effect do you think a conviction might have?
If you take him out and you convict him, because the jihadi movement has in some ways weakened considerably and deteriorated into many small cells instead of one big organization, his arrest and conviction per se are not going to make that much of a difference. There are other people who are more important ideologues, there are people who are more important operational activists, and there are people who are better recruiters than Abu Bakar Bashir ever was.
Could the death penalty, though, turn him into a martyr?
I don't think he'll be turned into a martyr. I think one of the interesting things is how little backlash there was against his arrest. If he were going to be turned into a martyr, then there would have been a much greater outcry when he was arrested. He's got a very strong network of followers, and those followers will cry foul, as they have already. But they're such a tiny minority that I don't think his conviction is actually going to make that much difference.
How would you characterise the terrorist threat in Indonesia at the moment?
As I said, I think the terrorist groups have been weakened considerably over the years. The problem is that even when they're weak, it only takes 5 to 10 people, maybe a little bit more, and a little bit of money and a little bit of explosives to put a team together to undertake an operation. So I think the potential for violence in Indonesia remains. I think that nobody should be complacent that the threat is over. But I think the ability to mount the kind of large-scale operations that we've seen in the past is somewhat diminished. The problem is it's very difficult to detect new groups emerging on the scene that we haven't seen before. It's another thing to track them down after they've actually committed violence. But there probably are groups that we don't know about now who are planning some activity.
Do you think the Indonesian authorities still have a long way to go in the crackdown on terrorism, or are they making sufficient inroads in your mind?
I think they're making very important inroads, and I think the fact that the groups are so much weaker today than they were 5 years ago is testament to the work that the police in particular have done. I think that there's a big task that remains to do a better job at counter-radicalization, that is, preventing people from being recruited in the first place. And that's something that is not the police job. It's something that other parts of the government have to get engaged in, and there's still a long way to go there.
How do you think that issue should be addressed?
I think it's got to be based on very hard data about where some of the radicalization has occurred already. There are known mosques, there are known schools. I think it's going to be a test to figure out whether you can take maybe 10 known sites where radicalization has taken place in the past and is ongoing and figure out strategies for trying to change the environment in those institutions.
Sidney Jones, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.